Commerce is the engine that keeps the settled systems moving. Every trade lane, every star station, and every frontier colony depends on a reliable ship to keep goods flowing. And where there is demand, there is opportunity for those bold enough to seize it. Introducing the VCX-200 Light Freighter, the next-generation multi-role transport built on the proven VCX-100 platform by Corellian Engineering Corporation and reimagined by Lindan Engineering Corporation. More than a freighter, the VCX-200 is a vessel of possibility, engineered for captains who demand speed, firepower, and the freedom to operate on their own terms. Dual VT2 Saker sublight thrusters paired with WD-1K auxiliaries deliver class-leading performance, giving captains the agility to bypass hostile blockades and outrun pirate raiders. And when escape isn't an option, the VCX-200 is always ready to fight. A fortified defensive suite featuring twin JTAC rapid-fire laser cannons, proton torpedo launchers, in addition to the stock forward and dorsal CEC turrets, ensures you'll have the firepower to hold your ground. Three decks of thoughtful design keep every system within reach. The lower deck features a cargo hold, along with optional storage capacity for gear and spacesuits. The main deck offers crew habitation, port side and starboard docking ports, each with auxiliary cargo bays, and a dedicated forward gunner pod. Above, the flight deck provides wide visibility and streamlined controls, giving pilots or a crew of up to 4 the confidence to command any mission. Whether hauling freight, running high-value contracts, or carving your own path across the stars, the VCX-200 delivers. Trusted by corporations, revered by captains, and quietly favored by those who thrive beyond the reach of regulation. The VCX-200 Light Freighter. Fast, capable, and yours to command.
All right, shipwrights, welcome to another LEC build. I've got another Star Wars ship build today, and one that's long overdue. It's the VCX-100 Light Freighter. Though for the Starfield universe, we're going to call this the VCX-200. But first, let's get into some quick ship lore. The VCX-200 Light Freighter was developed through a joint effort between Corellian Engineering Corporation and Lindan Engineering Corporation, and created to meet the high demand for dependable, multi-role transports across the settled systems. Building on the proven VCX-100 platform, the VCX-200 is a Class B ship that introduces a suite of modern refinements that have quickly earned it a reputation as one of the most versatile freighters in active service. Okay, so it seems like a lot of you are Corellian fans, because this ship is surprisingly the single most requested build that I've ever gotten, and I guess I've put it off long enough. I actually had this build complete for a couple of weeks now, but during this time, VCX released the ASC Deimos mod, which is a project I know that he's been working on for the past year, and man, what a quality mod this is. Since many of the parts in ASC Deimos are perfectly tailored for the VCX-100, it's something that I really wanted to implement for this build. At first, I was just going to make revisions to my original design that I already had, but it felt a bit too slapped together, and it also added another 20 minutes to the original build guide. So I bit the bullet and rebuilt the whole thing from the ground up. Actually, I went through 3 more revisions before I landed on a recreation that I was satisfied with. And I'm not gonna lie, it was mildly frustrating to do this, but had I gone with any of the revisions before this final one, the rebuild process would have just been very annoying for all of you due to the many hab snaps used to level out parts on the Y-axis. So I tried to make this final version as easy as possible while retaining as much accuracy as I could. Now altogether, this ship will cost a little under 1.6 million credits, while the original version that used Trinity Aeroworks parts was about 500,000 credits more. So with the ASC Deimos Foundation, it's significantly cheaper. Like many of my builds, a majority of the budget is tied to the Matelia weapons and components. In this case, the Matelia engines, shield generator, heavy fuel cells, and weapons cost just over 1.3 million credits, while the rest of the ship costs around 280,000 credits. So if you don't want to spend too much on this build, I recommend keeping at least the engines, but you can always switch up the other Matelia components and weapons, which can save you around 1 million credits, depending on your choices. At 58 meters long and 48 meters wide, this build is about 10 meters longer and wider than the actual VCX-100, so it's decently close to the actual dimensions, especially for Starfield standards. Now when it comes to the cockpit and the forward gunner pod, there's a few ways we could have gone about this, but going with the Badtech Armstrong gunner cockpit felt like the best balance between aesthetics and functionality. If you want the most accurate look, I would recommend using the Badtech porthole nose pod at the front and then merging the Armstrong cockpit on top of it. But that renders the whole gunner pod useless because that porthole nose has no entrance. It's just an aesthetic structural piece. Another option is to add a vanilla porthole in front of a hab, but in my opinion, that's kind of the least appealing option. At least with the Armstrong gunner cockpit, it really feels like an actual gunner pod inside the ship, and it almost looks the part on the outside. That being said, this build does require 2 paid mods, with the first being the new ASC Deimos mod by VCX, who is someone I consider to be a friend within the Starfield community. This new part mod costs 400 credits, and it brings in a ton of new custom Deimos themed parts that are perfectly fit for the Starfield universe. The parts feature a lot of greebling, which I love, and they're great for the more utilitarian ship designs, which I prefer to build. The second paid mod is Badtech. Now WK Baldwin has quite a few Badtech mods out there, but I always like to recommend getting Subspace Warfare, because it comes with 7 pre-built space submarine themed ships that you can immediately fly around. Now I need to apologize to those of you who use Nexus mods, because the first version of the ship is something that you could have followed along and built, since it primarily used parts from the Trinity Aeroworks mod. But since I decided to rebuild this with the ASC Deimos mod in mind, this video doesn't have a free alternative method that I usually provide. Though if you're creative enough, you can use the Trinity parts to build out the exact same shape. Since I already recorded the entire build process for the first version, I've uploaded a build video for it to a Google Drive folder that I've linked in the description. It won't contain any written instructions, but all the steps are there for you to build your own VCX-100. For the interior layout, I try to make it accurate within Starfield limitations, especially from the cockpit to the forward gunner pod. The interior for the original version was way more accurate overall with more habs, but for this final version, some compromises had to be made just to make the exterior more accurate while avoiding interior clipping. And as far as the build process goes, with a very symmetrical shape like this, there's a lot of repetition with the parts, so it's not going to be too complicated. I'd say the most difficult part will be snapping sections of the ship together at the right y-axis level, due to the use of Gillibrand Hab snaps, but I'll explain every step in detail. As always, if you have any questions or if you get stuck anywhere, feel free to reach out to me in the comments.
VCX-200, approach vector locked. Welcome to Outpost Isla Nublar. Surface crews are prepped for refuel and hull integrity scan. Touchdown confirmed. Stand by for manifest verification.
Alright, if you made it this far, thank you very much for watching. I've been working through some build requests for the next few Starfield builds, but with the release of ASC Deimos, there's just one more ship that I want to showcase first. When I was doing this VCX-100 recreation, I almost went with an inspired build, but I decided to stick with the recreation since it was so heavily requested. Now that inspired build actually turned out to be one of my favorite ships of all time, and since it's already finalized, I really want to show it to you all first. After that's done, I'm going back to some requested Star Citizen builds, and I have 3 in the works between the Drake Cutlass, the RSI Apollo Medevac, and the RSI Zeus. The Cutlass and the Zeus are actually perfect ships for the ASC Deimos mod, so I'm kind of leaning towards doing one of those, but let me know in the comments which one of these you prefer. Now for No Man's Sky, admittedly, I know I'm nowhere near as proficient with glitch building as I was with Starfield glitch building, so this is still a process that I'm trying to improve on. But a new update did just drop, and it included some new parts that I'm excited to mess around with, and I hope they can work for the Mercury Star Runner that I've been struggling to build. Though for my next video, I'll be doing a cargo freighter, which is one of the most requested ships that I've been getting. Also, I've mentioned this in the past, so I apologize if this sounds repetitive, but just a heads up, I'm going to be a bit busier for this last quarter, so I will try my best to keep up the same weekly upload schedule, but at the very least, I will still maintain 2 to 3 videos a month. And last thing, my channel just hit 6,000 subs, and I cannot thank you enough for all the support. A lot of you who are newer are here because of No Man's Sky, and I really appreciate you travelers for giving a Starfield channel like mine any attention at all. And to my longtime Starfield viewers, you are the reason LEC Star Yards is still in business in the settled systems. Thank you for continuing to tune in. As always, feel free to reach out to me in the comments if you have any questions or build requests, or if you just want to chat all things Starfield and No Man's Sky shipbuilding. This is Lindan, signing off. See you in the Starfield.